Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Misericorde. The last time we left off, Hedwig had some words to say to Angela, and none of them are pretty, that's for sure. Anyway, without further ado, let's just get right into today's episode. Supper that night was a lot more subdued than luncheon. We all gathered around the rectory table, but the conversation didn't spark the same way. People seemed worn out from the various tasks of the day. Small clusters of chatter broke out between little groups of people across the table. But mostly people ate their meals in silence. I was content with this state of affairs, at least for the moment. My plate was laden with wonderful-looking food from Darcy's garden, as well as a generous piece of chicken breast. I wolfed it all down in silence, trying to avoid eye contact from Angela, who was seated next to the superior at the head of the table once again. Kessel's book on chess is supposed to be quite interesting. So I have heard. Eustace, do we have a translated copy? In English or Castilian, I mean. I would have to check. I'll take a look and give it to you in the... Oh man, she's looking at us. Give it to you later. It's like there's a secret meeting of sorts that they don't want us to know about. Spectacular! After supper was Vespers. You'll be glad to know I didn't cough up any horrible black bile in the chapel this time. Hee. We chanted the evening prayers. It all felt very regimented. There was a certain peace to the proceedings. My head felt pleasantly empty and soft afterwards, free of the confusion and rage I had been alternating between earlier. When the office of Vespers was concluded, people trickled out of the chapel one by one. Left to my own devices, I wasn't really sure what to do. I followed everyone out of the building into the cloister, but nobody turned to ask what I was doing, if I'd like to join them, or anything of the sort. It felt like I had already ceased to be of any interest to the congregation. Invisible. I trailed behind everyone. I wasn't actually sure what I wanted. Hold up. Is it just me? Or is the sword not in the cloister anymore? Unless it's from like a certain angle that we are viewing it from, but I just distinctly remember seeing like a cross shape in the cloister. Did I want to be included? Would that make my job harder or easier? Would it make me feel better or worse? Now or when it came time to accuse one of them of the unthinkable? I looked across the cloister and stopped dead in my tracks. The sword was gone. I knew it! I knew it! I knew it! I ran across the grass to where it had stood. It had been right here. I had seen it. I had nearly touched it. Okay, but if it's not here, then what happened to it? The sword is gone. Hello? Hello? I called out, but everyone had dispersed already. I looked down at the grass and then, with jolt, looked up at where I'd seen the mysterious figure earlier. Oh, I'm not prepared for this. They weren't there. Okay, but at least I don't see any mysterious figure right now. I stared at the slight divot in the grass where the blade had been stuck into the earth for a little while. The superior. She had to be warned. Superior! Mother Superior, The door yanked open suddenly. Get in. Now. Are you quite mad? I will send for you when I am prepared to talk. If you're seen coming in and out of my office at will. I know, I'm sorry, but this is really important. You're putting both of us at risk. I apologize, but I'm making careful preparations so as not to rouse suspicions. Someone's taken the sword! The superior furrowed her brow. The sword in the courtyard. It's gone. I saw it there this afternoon and now it's missing. I know. She knows? Huh? I thought about what you said after luncheon about leaving a weapon lying around and decided you were completely correct. It was more than a little ghoulish. I told our sacrist to take care of it not long after you left. Eustace? Yes. She's in charge of all the relics and items of interest here, not just the books. Well, what if she's the killer? She has a wicked blade now. A sword that she could have gone and collected whenever she fancied. Were that the case? Hedwig. Leave the strategizing to me. There's nothing whatsoever suspicious about an abbess asking her sacrist to keep an object under her care. It makes absolutely no difference in the grand scheme of things if Eustace is involved or not. Why does she say that, though? She would have access to the blade either way. I suppose so. Now, if the blade turns up missing or, God forbid, gets used again, she will be the first person to call on. Please trust that I do think about these matters carefully. I like to play at least a few moves ahead. Moves ahead? What does that mean? Chess terminology. Have you played chess before? Oh man, are we gonna have another whole discourse about chess again? No. I'll have Eustace loan you Cecily's book on the subject. I feel like that is something quite important, and I also feel like I am mispronouncing that person's name. It's really interesting. I was well and bloody tired about hearing of chess, to tell you the truth. Anyway, you should go. If anyone asks, I was checking up on how your first day went. How did your first day go? I took a deep breath and raised my finger in the air, ready to let it all out again like I had in my previous meeting with the superior. I don't think she wants to hear that. However, I thought better of it in the end. Fine. All things considered, fine. Good. Good. Angela doesn't trust you. Now there's the shock of the century. Anything else? No. Very well then. I shall send for you when I am ready to speak on these matters again. And to take you to visit the accused. Understood, Abbess. Have a good night, Hedwig. Oh, I don't like this. I don't like the night. It feels so terrifying, especially here. I left. I trudged up the stairs back to the dormitories. I pulled my ropes a little tighter around myself. The wind was picking up outside. At the top of the stairs, I could see Eustace and Adela walking through the halls, holding torches and lighting the sconces on the walls near the entrance to the dorms, the library, and the Misericorde. I was somewhat surprised. Oh my, who's going to be awake to snuff all those out later? We typically only do the ones up here. This hallway gets a bit of traffic at night. The dorms, the library, and so on. Do not worry about fires, though. We put them out before we go to bed. I nodded absent-mindedly and continued towards the dorms. I had had a long day. The energy I had received from the bath had almost been entirely spent. I had no idea what the other nuns were planning to do with their night, but all I could think about was my bed. That's good. I swung open the door to my little room and plopped face first into the straw mattress. My head hit the pillow with a thunk. Oh, really? Oh shit, that's scary. What now? Is it just me? It's the first time I'm noticing that the The text box has like designs on it, and I'm actually really terrified, honestly. Let's see, will I get scared or not? I flung my pillow aside to reveal, don't tell me, please don't tell me, like it's a skull or something like that. Please don't, please. Oh, it's a book. Oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness, guys. I was really terrified out of my mind just now. If it's a book, do you think it's Catherine's? With a C. It had no title or adornment on the cover. But when I opened it, I was greeted by a lovely, illuminated title page. Medea? Transcribed proudly by Catherine II of Limbero, Tor Abbey. Oh my goodness, it really is Catherine's possession. For the enigmatic woman in the wall. Oh my goodness. Oh goodness. May she find this most interesting and edifying. Despite its pagan origins, with apologies to Eustace and Euripides and Euripides in kind. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna butcher everyone's names. I began to weep first and then sob. Here it was, the play I had been promised all those weeks ago. I cradled it in my arms. I dared not turn past the title page yet. Okay, so I know immediately I jumped to maybe someone planted the book in her room on purpose, but now that I think about it, it's pretty likely that it could have just been like Eustace who had the book and decided to finally give it to Hedwig. There was something that kept me glued to those words. Little words that had been written just for me. Catherine's handwriting was a little scratchier than mine, but it was full of character. I touched the page gently, running my fingers across the page to feel the slight indents where the quill had pressed into the parchment. She hadn't broken her promise to me in the slightest. I thought back to that night when she came to my window. How soon after that had she died? How long before Samhain had she planned to give me this? I knew from experience that transcribing anything was no simple task, even if a play was much shorter than the Bible. Oh, what a strange mixture of elated and despair I felt. I had a special gift from Catherine, but I would never be able to share my thoughts on the story with her. I was left with precisely half of an experience, and I would never, ever live the other half of it in all of my days. Aw, sad. It would have to do. Just knowing that Catherine had made this filled me with joy. As I dried my tears, I wondered who had brought this here for me. Nobody knew that I had spoken to Catherine, surely, unless she had told someone while preparing this book. Did I have a secret ally? Someone carrying out Catherine's last wish beyond the grave? Or perhaps Darcy had been right, and I was about to meet a friendly spirit. I fantasized for a few moments about reading Medea alongside some sort of transparent, flickering version of Catherine for a moment, but it was too sad to keep up for very long. I didn't even know what Catherine looked like. And well, ghosts don't exist, of course. I put my pillow back in its place and settled down. I couldn't read the play. Not just yet. The whole thing was just singing it still. I clutched the book to my chest and drifted off to a much-needed sleep. I just hope there's no jump scares in this. Oh goodness. Just as I was saying. I awoke with a start sometime later. I felt hot and uncomfortable as I rose from my bed. I was too tired and overwhelmed earlier to think to remove my habit. before drifting off. I carefully slotted the copy of media under my bedsheet and stepped out into the dormitory hall. Is it media? I don't think it's media. I'm gonna call it Medea from now on. Hello? Please tell me there is someone out there. Is everything alright out here? I spoke in a loud whisper, not wanting to wake anyone who may have also been trying to sleep. I got no response, however. I peered out into the second-floor hallway. The sconces were still lit, flickering somewhat in the wind. Up ahead, I could hear a door closing. People were still awake, it seemed. I sighed deeply. Was this the hazing the superior had mentioned this morning? Laura? Is that you? Margaret? Catherine? I guess these are the common suspects of hazing. I could hear faint laughter coming from somewhere down the hall. Curious, I crept forward. I could definitely hear laughter and talking and what sounded like a lute being strummed. Oh, Margaret did say she could play it. As I walked down the hall, the sounds got closer. I realized they were coming from the door next to the library. The Misericorde? I frowned. It sounded like there was a raucous party taking place behind the door. I was confused and a little hurt. I vaguely knew about the concept of the Misericorde from some of my reading. It was a room where the rules of Saint Benedict were lifted, and blades could partake freely in red meat and pork and other delights forbidden to us in a refectory on certain holidays. Only half of the congregation was meant to be allowed in at any given time, and yet it sounded like a full-blown banquet was happening behind this door. And today was no holiday. I really wasn't part of the group, was I? I would guess that someone knocked on her door to invite her. I had half a mind to barge in, but I turned around, startled. At least she's no Angela. At the end of the hallway, illuminated by the sconces, was a tall figure holding a sword. No, please, no. Oh goodness. Holy shit. That is super scary. Oh god, I don't know if I can continue. Oh god, I hate this. It's so scary. A black goat stood next to them, held by a rope leash. I will say that, a black goat. A goat is associated with the devil, right? Holy shit, this is so terrifying. Please, no zoom-ins, please. I wanted to scream, but I felt paralyzed. The figure wore black robes. You can see in the light, in the dim light. Oh god, holy shit. I'm so scared. Wait, okay, you know what? It's probably not actually anyone. It's probably Darcy with a black goat and carrying the sword for Eustace. That's what I'm gonna say. The figure was cloaked in what looked like a nun's habit, only longer, and without a white wimple or cowl. They stood taller than any woman I had ever seen. Okay, it's not Darcy then. Oh god, I'm terrified. I shouldn't have done this in the middle of the night. Slowly, the monster lifted their sword towards me, pointing with the blade, and as it glinted in the fire, I realized that they were wearing a large metal gauntlet. I took a step back. But as soon as I did, the apparition at the end of the hall thrust the blade they held into the air. Oh god. With a rumbling rush of air, all of the sconces in the hallway blew out. That's terrifying! That is terrifying! For a moment, everything was pitch black. Guys, I just feel like I am training myself every time I'm playing some kind of horror game. Oh, holy shit! No, that's scary. The figure's sword was suddenly wreathed in flame. I could see once more. This creature and their pet were an even stranger sight, lit only by a flaming sword. In the red light of fire, Their eyes glinted with an unholy sense of menace. Shadows danced through the hall as the mysterious figure slowly lowered their weapon again, bringing it to rest against the ground. Oh God. Oh, that's scary. After a moment, they dropped the leash they had been holding in their other hand and raised a finger to their shadowed lips. The goat stood still all the same. Assured of my silence, the apparition lowered their hand to the sword's handle. I didn't dare move or make a sound. I was absolutely in their thrall. Now gripping it with both hands, they lifted the burning sword high into the air. Firelight flickered around the hall in an eerie pattern. Oh, no, please. What? And they beheaded the goat in one swift motion. The fire was snuffed out, and I was plunged into purest darkness. Oh, that's terrifying. Unable to bear it anymore, I finally screamed. Oh my goodness. I heard booming metal boots against stone. Fearful that it was the beast bearing down on me, I turned to flee but got tripped up on my habit. I stumbled to the ground and knocked my head against the stone so hard I could see stars. Oh no, that's gonna be really bad. I groaned in pain and struggled to find my bearings, but I was quite dazed. After a few moments of scrambling, I realized there was a thin strip of light next to me in the darkness. The Misericorde? As the sounds of chair scraping was heard, shadows began to pass over the bright line, and I recognized it was candlelight leaking from underneath the Misericorde door. There was some panic fiddling with a latch, and then the door finally swung open. Oh, the figure is gone. A few of the sisters huddled around me. Adela was holding a candle and looked by far the bravest of the group. Hedwig, are you quite alright? Whatever is the matter? There's intruder! I lifted a hand weakly to point down the hallway where I had seen the ghastly apparition. Adela took a few steps that direction, but I lunged forward to grab her frock. No, they're armed! Armed? Yes, there was a monstrous figure at the end of the hall carrying a sword. What? What should we do? Marta and Charity appeared in the Misericorde's doorway. Excuse my awful hearing, but did you say you saw someone with a sword? Heavens above. I thought we were done with that sort of nonsense. Adela had tugged her robe out of my grip and was cautiously walking down the hall. Oh, she is brave indeed. She is so brave, I can only aspire to be like her. I dragged myself to my feet and made to follow her, the rest of the sisters who had spilled out of the Misericorde in tow. Tell me everything that happened, Sister Hedwig. I heard someone knocking on my door, and when I stepped out to investigate, no one was there. So I left the dormitories to see if they had gone down the hall perhaps. And then I saw someone at the end of the hall, carrying a weapon and with a goat in tow. Hold on. A goat? Yes, and then they raised their sword, and the torches blew out. Crumbs, I would have been scared out of me wits. I still am. What happened next? I'm dying to know. I suppose it must have been a he, the more I think about it. He lit his sword aflame and beheaded the goat. But not before pointing straight at me. A threat was leveled against me directly. Beheaded a goat, you say? Yes! This is a rather strange story, Hedwig. I understand, but you must believe me. We had reached the end of the hallway, which split in two directions. A large door to the surrounding wall of the abbey was open to our left, wobbling slightly in the wind and creaking softly. Where did this swordsman kill the goat, Hedwig? It would have been, well, here. Just about. I gestured around myself in a circle, but as I looked at the stone floor, I realized there wasn't a speck of blood to be seen. Oh goodness. Are you feeling quite alright, Hedwig? You must have been seeing things, but something tells me that there is a story here about the goat, perhaps? No shame in it, mine. There's all sorts of odd things I've convinced myself I've seen in the dark. And you're in an unfamiliar place and all. No, I saw it. It happened right here. Everyone was looking at me with a mixture of concern and annoyance now. Can we go? It's bleeding cold. Oh, holy shit. Adela's candle blew out. I've been calling her Adela. I've been calling everyone's name wrong. Everyone yelped. The door that had been easing back and forth in the nighttime air had suddenly slammed shut in the wind. The noise echoed throughout the hall with bone-rattling power. Christ almighty! That just about took my poor heart out. That and everything before it. Is everyone alright? I was quite shaken myself, but I soon realized that everyone else was chuckling. I'll admit it. That was a pretty good one, Hedwig. Oh, everyone thinks it's a joke. A good... Absolutely fiendish. You are a very convincing actress. I was truly bewildered. In the darkness, I could just barely see Marta clutching her chest and catching her breath. But she flashed me an approving smirk. Catherine was attempting to center herself with deep breaths between exasperated chuckles. Adela's face emerged from the darkness in front of me all of a sudden. She had her hands on her hip and she looking at me in mock fury. We must watch out for her in the future. What's going on out here? We heard screaming. My eyes were slowly adjusting to the darkness. I could see that some more of the sisters had emerged from the dormitories, some wearing night clothes. Nothing to worry about. Hedwig just scared us all witless with a little prank. Ooh, do tell. She gave that the most convincing howl to draw us out of the Misericorde, and then cooked up an ingenious story to lead us down here and keep us occupied until the door slammed shut. No, if you think about it, how is it possible? No way. Hedwig can tell when the door is gonna be slammed shut by the wind. It gave us all quite a fright. No. Oh, that's good. What did he use? String? Use? Not a trace of twine here. She must have known it banged shut sooner or later in the wind. Lucky guess. Hence the cock and bull story once we got here. You can spin a yarn, Hetty. I'll give you that. We have a nickname now, Hetty. Not half. That's impressive, Hedwig. Hello. What's all this then? Are we having a party in the hallway? The rest of the sisters had caught up. I realized that nearly everyone was here. Who is missing? Angela and the superior, of course. Catherine, Flora, Dela, Marta, Charity, Margaret, Moira, Darcy, and Eustace were all clamoring around me in the hall, engulfed in an orb of candlelight. All except... Where's Angela? Probably busy seeing if she can fit an even bigger stick up her backside. Who cares? Consider it a mercy that she isn't here, honestly. I'm not sure she would find this so funny. I swallowed nervously. The narrative that this had all been some grand prank of mine had taken hold so hard and fast that I couldn't possibly push back against it. A happy accident, I suppose, given that it was clear as day. There was no blood at the end of the hallway where I had seen the goat beheaded, and no mysterious figure waiting for us brandishing a sword to chase. We should probably get you back to bed, lest the superior finds out you've been organizing practical jokes in the middle of the night. Yes, she's been a bit touchy about that sort of thing lately. Oh. Yes, although I expect she was more worried about us hazing the newcomer, rather than the newcomer hazing us. Oh, that reminds me, Hedwig. Did you like my prank? What prank? Your prank? Everyone looked at her as we walked back towards the dormitories in a huddle. Yes, I knocked on your door and then ran back into my room. Oh my goodness, why is that so cute? A small titter rose up from all the sisters. Dearie me. Oh, silly. Eustace didn't want me to, but I did it anyway. I was mostly worried you wouldn't make it back without being caught. I'm faster than I look. Oh, I remember she is. Or knocking something over. It was very funny, Darcy. You gave me quite a scare. I forced a smile as best I could, but inside I was screaming. Were the knock and the horrid apparition two separate events? How is that possible? It was hard to accept, although not half the one you gave us. No, I'm so scared. We had arrived at the Misericorde door, still hanging open into the hall. Flora? Shall we continue our game? I had you retreating if memory serves. Actually, I think you might have accidentally knocked over the pieces in confusion when we heard Hedwig scream. No. Oopsie daisy. I think I have more than enough entertainment for the night and shall retire to my dormitory. Likewise. Well, at the very least, no one needs to worry about snuffing all of the torches out before bed. Everyone murmured in agreement. The group migrated back towards the dorms. Everyone was yawning by now. A few people said their goodnights to each other before retreating into their dorms or rooms. I mimicked these pleasantries as best I could, but my mind was completely elsewhere. I wanted to grab someone, anyone by the shoulders, and scream at them that it hadn't been a prank. That I had really seen a goat slaughtered in the hall, and that any missing evidence was obviously the work of some witchcraft. I had half a mind to stop Darcy going to sleep and ask her about what she had meant about the Abbey being haunted. Or perhaps more importantly, tell her that her vision had perfectly predicted what had happened. Did it? Did it really? I stood in front of my door, arguing with myself, before finally sighing deeply and stepping inside. Oh, now I remember. She said, fire and goat. Holy shit, that's scary. My mind was racing, but I couldn't ask anyone else to keep pace with me now. Not only was it quite late now, but I had narrowly, miraculously perhaps, avoided being branded a lunatic thanks to a lucky gust of wind. I flopped onto the mattress. I stared at the ceiling for a few moments, trying to work my breathing back down to a regular pace, trying to unwind the tight strings I could feel around the front of my mind. Rationally, I knew that I should sleep, even after spending a significant amount of the day resting. I was dead tired. But how could I? What if they came back? What if they came here to... Oh goodness. I really was tired. I was very, very tired. Sleep. You deserve it. I'm so scared. What is that? The Misericorde? Perhaps? It's a bit hard to see, 'cause it's so dark. After what couldn't have been more than an hour, I awoke with a start and a yelp. After a moment, I realized I was sitting straight up in bed with my fists raised. Sleep may have taken me, however briefly, but I suppose I could take at least some comfort in the discovery that I would have been ready if any attacker had made their way into my room. If she has a fist raised, perhaps she is mimicking or acting out what happened in the hallway? Whatever good my skinny fists would do against a broadsword, at least. It was dead quiet, save for a light whipping of the wind and a few crows in the distant woods. My eyes adjusted to the darkness after a few moments. Please, no eyes in the dark. I steadied myself and then crept out of bed, sliding my nightgown over my head. Is it morning already? I wasn't going to be able to sleep, not until I could be sure I was safe from whatever horrid creature had menaced me earlier. I placed an ear to the door, just to check if my little squeak upon waking up had alerted anyone. Silence. The stone wall between us were quite thick then. Carefully, I opened my door. Mercifully, it wasn't excessively creaky. No, would you really want to go out in the middle of the night if there's something outside your door? I know I would not do it. Oh, the music scared me. While there was a little moonlight leaking in through the threshold to the landing, it was far too dark to go exploring without a light. I remembered Eustace and the others had been holding candles when they came to check on things earlier, so surely there must be... Aha! I hadn't spent much time in the dormitory's main room. Sure enough, there was a cricket holding a slightly droopy candlestick resting on the simple mantel above the fireplace. I held a hand in front of the iron hearth cover. I couldn't feel much warmth, but I had to try. The cover was quite heavy. I did my utmost to not make a sound as I pulled it out of the way, just enough to peer into the fireplace itself. Hold up, but is that sound... There was like a little sound. Sounds... Oh, the bells. Is it a bell? It just kind of reminds me of a clock. You know, striking 12 or something. Sure enough, a little gust of warmth billowed out. The fire had been banked with ash, just as I had done many times in my cell. Carefully, I stretched my hand into the fireplace to brush some of the gray dust off the embers before touching the candlestick to it. Eventually, the wick took, and I had a little light all my own. I nearly dropped the candle in surprise. A noise had come from one of the adjoining bedrooms. Terrified, I scrambled out of the dormitory as fast as I could, just as one of the doors swung open. Why? Why though? I held a hand over the candlestick's flame in an attempt to hide the flickering light. Where is she going? Is she really going to go back to where the shadow and the goat was? I could hear hushed voices carrying out of the room into the hallway. Thurs! What? Where did I put the candle? Oh, I don't know. Damn it! I've got one here. Hang on. Give it here then. Honestly, what are you like? Very talented and very smart? Not what I was thinking at this particular moment. What's wrong? Nothing. A moment later, I could see orange light emanating through the threshold into the hallway. My breath was shallow and ragged as I tried to stay as quiet as possible, and I was still turned at an awkward angle to hide my own candlelight. Come on then. Yeah, sorry, I thought I heard something. Maybe it's the ghost. Ooh. Let's be careful what we joke about. Is it really haunted? Oh goodness. Who's joking? Eustace had no answer for this and turned away from the landing back into the dormitory. I heard a few footsteps and finally a door closing. As stealthily as I could, I left my hiding place and scurried down the hall. As quietly as I could manage, I moved through the hallway towards the spot where the apparition had emerged. I held for a moment as I passed the Misericorde, straining to hear if anyone was behind the door. If there was, I couldn't hear them. I continued onward, my heart beginning to beat out of my chest. Believe me, Hedwig, you are not alone. Oh goodness, please. What was I doing? The way I saw things, I was in danger no matter where I was. That thing could either kill me in my sleep or catch me out in the halls. I was woefully unprepared in either scenario, and perhaps more importantly, I had a wicked sense of curiosity about the whole situation. I padded over to the spot I was sure I had seen the figure behead that poor creature. Just as before, no blood. The large door that had given us all a start was still closed, now merely wobbling gently in the lighter wind. Slowly but surely, I walked towards the door, scanning the floor for any signs of blood. There was nothing. I reached the large wooden door itself. Presumably, the swordsman would have had to have left through this doorway into the night to disappear after their hideous ritual. Curiosity got the better of me. Oh! With some trepidation, I slowly pushed open the door, hoping that its creaking wouldn't echo down the halls too loudly. I wedged it open just enough to slip through myself, but... not again. The force of the door closing blew out my candle. Oh no. Still rattled from the sudden sound, I retreated from the hallway, or the doorway. I stood in near pitch darkness once again, although this time I felt more irritated than terrified. Pale moonlight leaking through the main hallway was all I had left to navigate with. I held a hand against the wall and slowly walked back the way I came. The windows running along the hallway that looked down into the cloister finally came into view, so I at least had some inkling of where I was now. Heading away from the confounded door, I could see the path back to the hall that my old cell was located in. I stood for a moment, taking it in. I felt a supernatural pull towards that old hallway. As I stepped closer, however, I could hear a strange whistling sound. No, I don't like this. I felt a chill run up my spine and decided that I would actually much prefer to be in bed after all. I headed back to the hallway to the dormitory, past the library and Misericorde. Out of the corner of my eye, however, I saw a black shape below the landing. Oh no! There was someone in the cloister. Oh, and it's gonna flash their eyes towards me, aren't they? I'm terrified. I am so terrified right now. I held my breath and watched as the figure paced around the grass. Their head was down, and I realized that they could not yet see me. They were looking away from the landing, although at what, I could not determine. My heart pounding once more, I hid behind a pillar and poked my head around to watch. It reminds me, I guess, of the figure watching Hedwig. And now it's reversed. Hedwig is watching the mysterious figure. The figure stood still for a few moments more. A part of me I had never met bade me to stay and observe, too curious to escape just yet. Just who or what was this monster? With a dramatic turn, they suddenly left the center of the cloister and disappeared into the shadows around the edge of the lawn. At first, I squinted to try and make out where they were going. Oh goodness. until a far more intelligent part of me realized this creature could be heading up the stairs. Oh no. I crept onwards as quickly and quietly as I could, back to the imaginary safety of my bed. It was far too strange out in the halls at night. Oh goodness. I thought I was gonna get scared again. Well, I did get scared, but that's beside the point. I made it back inside my small room without a peep. I let out a deep, relieved sigh. As well as feeling terrified, I felt a little embarrassed. My first investigative venture had ended without so much of a hint of a clue. But I was also terrified. I got onto the mattress once more, but I dared not shut my eyes. If you were in this kind of situation, what would you do? I feel like I would try to sleep, even if you can't. Instead, I sat facing the door and removed the candle from the briquette I held. The pitiful metal spike would have to serve as my weapon if that ghoul came to my door. They did not appear. I sat like that all night, clinging steadfast to my weapon and going over everything in my head. Before I knew it, morning came. I dutifully leapt out of bed and dressed as quickly as I could. As I pinned my cowl together, I mused over the best way to face the days ahead. I furrowed my brow and concentrated as hard as I could. The mist that had been lingering in my mind since the superior snatched me out of my cell was evidently there to stay, and if I were to make any forward progress on the task at hand, I would simply have to deal with it. First of all, for the health of my own soul, I would strive to attend all services and meals, no matter how terrified I was. However, I may have embarrassed myself on the day prior. It wouldn't do to give up on ingratiating myself to the others. And more to the point, now that I was no longer an anchoress, this is how I would maintain my worship. I could not compromise on this any further than I had already. Mysterious demonic figures be damned. I would not let evil win. I had broken a sacred oath, but I would slip no further. This fear that I felt, the danger that I faced. So be it, I thought. Secondly, Angela was the only sister who didn't show up last night after I screamed. It was quite possible that she was fast asleep or simply didn't care. But it was, at the very least, something I could follow up on for wherever Superior next asked if I had any leads. There was plenty else swirling around in my head, but it would have to wait. Hello? Just checking. I opened the door to see that Eustace had already turned to leave, apparently satisfied knowing I was up and about. Darcy saw me and gave me a friendly wave before following her bespectacled friend. A few of the others were shuffling out of the dormitories and into the hallway behind her. They seemed to not have noticed me at all. In the chapel, I tried to find myself a spot in the pews that was neither too close or too far away from the others to be noticeable. What are you doing over here all by your lonesome? So much for that. I smiled weakly at her as she settled in next to me. Service itself went well. I threw myself into the worship, but I had a lingering feeling of shame that I could not shake during prayer. Between breaking my oath and interrupting a service by vomiting all over the place, I was increasingly worried about my standing in the eyes of the Lord. I worried as hard as I prayed. Perhaps harder if I am being entirely truthful. It was with some relief that the liturgy ended when it did. The worries had been winning out for most of the service. Breakfast consisted of a thin, warm oat pottage. It was interesting watching the others eat. For the first time, I felt like I was seeing some of my fellow nuns less than completely put together. Little pieces of conversation floated around the table, but for the most part, it was a quiet affair. There was nothing for it. Sister Angela? What is it, Sister Hedwig? What did you get up to last night? Do you really want to ask this over breakfast? I slept. I tried to ignore the snorts and giggles that arose from the others. I turned bright red and returned to my meal. So much for that avenue of investigation. It's true, I'm sure. She sleeps like a log. Catherine then leaned over her plate and whispered to me in such a manner that ensured everyone could hear. Don't worry, Hedwig. You'll get her next time. When everyone had finished eating, the superior stood to address the table. Everyone shifted in their seats to look more alert. All except Angela, who had already been sitting with her back perfectly straight throughout the entire meal. Hedwig, Eustace, if you'd follow me. Angela, clear up if you would. Yes, ma'am. Yes, Abbess. Angela made a show of rising to her feet. Of course, Abbess. I could feel her staring daggers into my back as Eustace and I followed the superior outside. She led us inside towards the stairs to the second floor of the main building. Where are we going? To the library. Eustace is going to help you get started with your work. Oh yes, of course. I was the Chronicler now after all. I realized as we crested the stairs that I didn't actually know what that meant. I have my own work to do, just so you know. I'm sure Hedwig will only need your assistance with the very basics. The library was a very odd room indeed. I had pictured it as a regimented hall with organized bookshelves lining the walls, perhaps with a long table in the middle for a shared reading space. In reality, it was certainly a room with bookshelves and a table, but it was as if someone had squashed the idea in my head to fit into the second floor room. I now feel like the first part of Darcy's vision is going to come true. Rows and rows of bookshelves with ink that lash like flames. Oh goodness. The table was off kilter. The books were scattered across the shelves seemingly at random. It isn't much. It's wonderful. I could see Eustace raise an eyebrow out of the corner of my eye. I suppose she had expected me to balk at the state of the room, but I was thrilled to be in the presence of so much scripture again. Not only that, but there was something about the disorganization that spoke to me. It certainly had the most charm of any of the rooms beyond my cell I'd visited yet. You surprised me. Thank you for the vote of confidence. It is rather topsy-turvy in here. I have a system. Have I ever lost anything? I suppose I cannot argue with results. That's right. Anyway, this desk in the corner, this was Catherine's. You'll be sharing this space with Eustace often, I imagine. I see. I was led to a little desk in the corner closest to the hallway door. I hadn't noticed it when we walked in. The whole thing was obscured by a pile of books and folded up documents. It was almost like I had my own little room with walls I could peer over. These large books are what you'll be writing in. And I will be writing the events of each day previous, as well as details of any important correspondence. Oh, right. Of course. Chronicling. I tapped my forehead in an attempt to make a knowing gesture. Eustace will sort through any mail we receive and put anything important on your desk to be noted. Then you can pass the documents to her for filing. I have a system. Well, if you have any more questions, I'm sure Eustace will be happy to assist you. I must go and make my rounds with the other sisters before attending to my own work. Eustace and I gave bowing nods to the abbess as she left the room. As soon as the door was closed, Eustace shuffled over to her own desk on the opposite side of the room to mine, with its own piles of bric-a-brac threatening to topple over at any minute. I drummed my fingers on the desk for a moment before reaching for one of the massive empty books the superior had indicated. I opened it up and marveled at the blank pages. For the first time in a while, it felt like I was back where I belonged. That is, until I picked up a quill. I soon realized that without scripture to transcribe, I was at a total loss confronted with white paper. What should I write, you think? That's your job, not mine? Yes, well, it's all a bit new to me now that I think about it. I would have thought you've given it quite a bit of thought before deciding to leave your cell. Well, I wanted to say that I hadn't decided that at all, but I couldn't. Be that as it may, it is a little different, actually, being here. What are you working on? Cataloging? What's that? It's something that's very difficult to do if someone is talking to you. Oh, I'm sorry. We sat in silence for a moment. I stared at the blank pages in front of me again for a moment, feeling a little stung. Come on, I'll show you. I hadn't noticed Eustace walking over to my side of the room. She was looking over my wall of books with a no-nonsense expression on her face. I stood up, not wanting to irritate her any further. The library here houses a lot of scripture, obviously, but it also carries many other books and documents. For example, recipes or songbooks. Over here we have a little chess section. A whole section for chess? Yes. I didn't intend for it, but things just sort of ended up that way. How's that? Well, I have a small budget for procuring requests, and some people here got really into chess. I see. Let's see, some gardening books, Darcy read those, obviously. Some history books, tarot. What on earth is tarot? Another tarot. You know, fortune-telling? Fortune-telling? Is it actually even allowed inside a monastery? Isn't it considered witchcraft? Who on earth would meddle with that kind of thing here? You'd be surprised. I grimaced. The more I discovered about this abbey, the more it felt like it was occupied by a horde of cerebates. What are cerebates? Eustace ran her fingers over the spines of some of the books, clearly looking for something. Here's some classical stuff. Greek plays and so on, and histories. That was all Catherine's department, make no mistake. Actually... Why does she look kind of different here? She looks kind of different, but it's also kind of cute. She gestured idly around with one arm. Most of this place was. She'd read everything here at least once, I'd imagine. Wow, that's impressive. Well, I've read all of it twice or more, but yes, it is fairly impressive. Nice going, Eustace, nice brag. What's in there? I pointed at a door off to one side of the room, nestled between messy shelves. That's the other half of my job. She produced a ring of keys and inserted one into the door, fiddling with it for a moment before unlocking it with a loud clunk. I'm gonna bet that the sword isn't gonna be there, but I see a suit of armor. Oh goodness. Inside was another storage room of sorts, only instead of books, it was filled with boxes, chests, and what could only be described as a hoard of miscellanea. This is where we keep some of the Abbey's more notable possessions. We've got some relics. You have relics here? Steady on, nothing particularly interesting. I'm actually not sure how many of them are real. It's a bit of a racket, relics. You wouldn't believe how many people claim they have the holy prepuce in a vault somewhere. The holy... It's best you don't ask. The point is, if you took every piece of the true cross on display around the world and put them together, it'd be taller than the Tower of London. And that's just the Christly relics. With saints, it's even more ridiculous. It's my job to confirm the provenance of the relics we hold here, and I'm not holding my breath for any of them. Well, what else do you keep in here? There's this fellow, for starters. She tapped the breastplate of a suit of armor on display in the corner of the little room. My heart leapt into my throat. The glint of metal was all too familiar. What is that? Ah, I suppose you wouldn't know what it is, would you? Oh, no, I know a suit of armor when I see one. I was just curious if this one holds any particular significance. We've been holding it for safekeeping for the Receiver General of some well-to-do estate. It must be something that ties back to the beginning of the story. I feel it. What's a Receiver General? A well-paid bookkeeper? Oh. I hazarded another question that I hoped would sound casual. And you're the only one with a key to this room? What a responsibility. The Superior also has a key. She's got the keys for most things, I should think. That makes sense. In case one goes missing. Steady on. Maybe I have one in case hers goes missing. I glanced around at the piles of assorted bits and pieces scattered around the room. Of course. Anyway, that just about wraps up the tour, I think. Oh, are you keeping a sword in here by any chance? I noticed it was gone from the courtyard. It was there yesterday morning and then gone after evening service. Eustace let out a ragged sigh and pinched the bridge of her nose. When she spoke, she had the unmistakable air of someone choosing her words very diplomatically. Yes, Hedwig, I am keeping Catherine's sword here. The Superior asked me to move it. I'm sorry. Let's go. We've both got work to do. She ushered me out of the little room back into the library. I skulked to my new desk, well aware I'd overstepped some boundary. Eustace sat at her own desk and began sifting through pieces of parchment. Occasionally, she would scribble something in a ledger. From the sound of it, she was taking some feelings out on the paper. Oh no. I tapped my own quill against the empty book in front of me. I hadn't the foggiest idea what to write, but I needed to do something. I supposed the date was as good a place to start as any. Do you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of that SpongeBob episode where he is trying to write a story or an essay and he's only stuck at the illuminated T. Excuse me, but what is the date today? It's the 11th of November. Thank you. Oh, fiddle. I wrote today's date, but I'm writing about yesterday. So cross it out. Right, okay. The 10th of November. On the 10th of November. Well, a lot happened, didn't it? I felt a flash of inspiration when I thought of all the things I could write about my life. What the Superior had forced me to do, how awkward I had felt being thrust into a double life. But of course, I could not do it. I had to focus on the basics, which was harder than it sounded. How did Catherine like to write things? Surely there are some reference materials. I do have my own work to do, Hedwig. I know I'm not sure how to best write things down. Eustace kept scribbling something in her ledger, not answering. Could I take a look at her old chronicles, perhaps? No, you can't, really? Why? Because I don't have them anymore. Where are they? Why are you so intent on pestering me about Catherine? Oh, she got really irritated for some reason. I had started sniffling. I couldn't help it. I bit my lip and tried to control myself, but it was too late. Eustace kept writing in her ledger. It was so quiet, I could hear a tear hitting the parchment on the desk in front of me. I wasn't trying to be a pest. Don't be so modest. You're quite good at it. Oh, why is she so mean? I lurched out of my chair. The precarious pile of books on the table wobbled, and I could hear glass shattering as I flounced away, sobbing uncontrollably. I fumbled my way deeper into the library. I didn't know where I was going. I just wanted to get away. I feel so sorry for her. Hedwig! Hedwig! Come back! I could hear her calling after me, but I didn't listen. I ran into the rows of shelves, not paying attention to where I was going. Oh, don't tell me a fire will start in the library. Even if I had been, it would have been hard to see. I was bawling by that point, with my eyes scrunched up and full of tears. I stumbled around blindly. A few books fell off their shelves as I brushed past. I found a corner in one of the aisles and fell to a crouch, curling into a little ball and burying my head between my knobbly knees. Oh, poor Hedwig. It was all coming out. The embarrassment, the shame, the anger, and the fear. I'm not sure if it was even Eustace's snippy comments that really did me in. Eustace was far less intimidating than a disappearing swordsman, but nevertheless, here I was. It really was quite dark back here. I couldn't tell how far I had gotten into bookshelves. The library had no windows. All lights emanated from a simple chandelier above the desk and table. I tried to dry my face with my robe. It didn't do much, considering I was still crying. I felt quite pathetic. For a little while, I bumped around in the dark, hoping to just stay out of Eustace's earshot. It wasn't long until I staggered into one of the shelves, though sending books cascading onto my head like hail. I yelped in surprise. Hedwig? I looked up to see Eustace standing above me. She looked quite worried. I'm really sorry, Hedwig. Will you come back to your desk? Eustace crouched down next to me and took my hand in hers. She squeezed them gently. I shouldn't have been so rude to you just then. It's not your fault. It's okay, I understand. Let's go and talk about it at our desks, yeah? No, you don't understand. No one does. No one can. You're inquisitive because you've never been outside your cell before. It's really not your fault. I'm having a hard time with losing Catherine. I don't know how to handle questions about her. Okay, now I understand. It's not just that. What else is there? I looked up at Eustace's face. It was hard in the dark, but I could make out a wary attempt at a reassuring smile flickering on her lips. She is trying. Nothing that due to say now, I suppose. I'm all over the place, just in total. Eustace's smile grew, but she looked altogether sadder. She reached out to adjust my messy cowl, then stood up, guiding me back to a standing position with her hand. Come on, up you go. Let's go back, yeah? I nodded, still sniffling. I really am sorry. I was being quite cruel. It's all right. Don't keep apologizing. You sound just like me. I laughed feebly at my own joke. I just wanted to show that there weren't any hard feelings, even if it was far too early to really know that. Eustace patted me on the shoulder and set me down in my chair, then adjusted some of the wobbly books back into a slightly less precarious position. That sword killed her, you know. That's why I was a bit touchy. Yes, the superior told me as much. I was just curious because... why was the sword left out there? In the cloister, I mean. It seems so dangerous to leave that sort of thing around. Especially when it had just been used to I can see what you find it strange, but I think there's a good object lesson for you here. You're not wrong that it's a little odd to leave a sword lying around. But that's because you're an outsider. Listen. Eustace's voice had returned to its usual monotone register once we'd gotten back to the desks, and she reached out sharply to tilt my chin up without a shred of the tenderness she'd used amidst the bookshelves. Inside and outside aren't value judgments. We're all outsiders to someone. I dare say we'd both feel out of place in Persia. I see. You're saying I don't know the customs? Something like that. It might be something even harder to define than customs. History, perhaps. I didn't expect to feel this alone. We're all Catholic, after all. I think one of the first things you'll pick up on is how little that matters. I think I'm already there. Halfway, at least. I'm sure you had a very specific idea of what life was like for us when you were in your cell that is being challenged by reality. Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yet you're completely correct. Everyone here is Catholic. We're all oblates. And yet, after only one full day, I've heard cursing, filthy jokes, and downright meanness from the mouths of my sisters. I flushed a little. Not to drag our fight out. I do accept your apology. That's all right. You're not wrong, but that also doesn't make anyone here less Catholic. Well, it certainly seems like not many people here are holding to the latter. That doesn't matter. Doesn't it? No, I don't think it does. The church encompasses the world so wholly, it's very hard to not be part of it to some degree. I'm not sure I understand. You like money. Truth be told, I have never held any money. Bad example then, perhaps? No, try to explain. You at least understand the concept of money, right? Of course. Do you think money is fair? I think money certainly creates an opportunity for unfairness, though in that sense, I think I'd say it's quite a bad thing. Wow, okay, that's further than I was expecting you to go, actually. Well, that certainly happens a lot in the Bible, in fact. Eustace held up her hands and chuckled softly. No need to quote Ecclesiastes to me. I understand how you got there. I was going to quote Matthew, actually. 19:24? No, 6:24. Actually, that's a great way to illustrate my point. Oh, now another bunch of Latin. Ye be not able to serve God and riches. Mammon. Mammon is riches. Yes, I suppose, a demon of riches. You think Mammon is a being? You don't think it's a metaphor? What's the difference? Good answer, actually. Anyway, we both agree then that you cannot worship money and God. Of course. But we are nuns. We tend to the poor, theoretically at least. Would it be wrong for the poor to covet money? Covet, I think, is a strong word. But they are poor. Poor exists because rich exists because poor exists. They're opposite ends of a spectrum that governs their day-to-day lives. How could a poor person not covet money? Food, clothes, shelter. Things provided by lords who have a lot of money, which is provided to them by kings who have even more money. So you're saying that everyone worships riches? Nobody's truly Catholic? No, I'm saying that money is as essential as air to people who want to live in this world. And when money is scarce, the church provides for them. We provide for them by extension. You know, money is evil. You understand the inequality money inherently causes and the way in which the Bible describes this. Yet, if you were to leave tomorrow, if you struck out on your own to live a life in London or what have you, how would you, without money? Who would ever provide for you but the church? I'm afraid I don't quite understand. The church is air. If nobody here was Catholic, none of them could breathe. I didn't really know what to make of this. Eustace had certainly practiced this expression of her worldview, but I didn't fully understand what she was talking about. Partially because I was still slightly dazed and over-emotional, but more because it sounded very convenient. This was a very dim view of the church and faith. Does that make sense? I understand what you're trying to say, at least. Well, I'm glad I did it some justice, at least. Catherine's version was a lot clearer. That was something Catherine said? Paraphrased, but more or less. Catherine would talk about 3 times longer than I could on the subject. Most subjects, to tell you the truth. I tend to ramble. I will have to think about all this. That is a most interesting opinion for an Abbey's chronicler to hold. Eustace had turned to walk back to her own desk. Like I've already told you, Catherine was a very interesting person. I should have liked to have met her. She sat back down at her desk and began working in her ledger again. The same old Eustace had finally returned. It's a shame her chronicles are gone. Then I could learn a lot from them, it sounds like. I picked up my quill and began writing. This conversation had certainly been illuminating. Inspiring even, although not in the sense that I wanted to write like Catherine. To tell you the truth, I couldn't believe Eustace was relaying whatever Catherine's opinion had been fairly. It certainly did nothing to shake the idea that I was in the midst of a group of Therobates rather than Benedictines. So I felt that for now, I should chronicle things in an uplifting and holy a manner as I could. I would log the daily activities, liturgies, mealtimes, and so on, and I would highlight the godly deeds I witnessed throughout the day. I reasoned that this would be healthier than listing the decidedly ungodly things I noticed. I would search for the positives, as it were. Are there any letters I need to transcribe in here today? Not today, no. Does much mail come through here? Loads. Who for? Eustace peered at me over her glasses witheringly. Most everyone, I should think. There isn't much else to do here. Who writes the most? You're being nosy. I'm just curious. You never know who has a gift for writing. It's Catherine, if I had to guess. Catherine the First, she's very popular. Really now? How interesting. I suppose. There's no accounting for taste. A thought crossed my mind. Are you sure there's nothing I could help with? Are there any letters that Catherine II was supposed to sort? I could take a look. If there were... There are not. Really. I've already taken care of any unopened mail in Catherine's possession. I see. In that case, I think I might be finished. Eustace rose from a chair and walked over to mine. She leaned over my shoulder. Holding her spectacles against the bridge of her nose, she read aloud. 10th November of the year of our Lord 1482. The hours were observed in morning and evening liturgies. Luncheon was held in a rectory, as was supper. We actually had breakfast as well, but I supposed you weren't there for that. Breakfast before a liturgy? Sometimes. Vacant position of dearly beloved chronicler fulfilled. Rest in peace. That's nice. By myself, what? A kindness was visited upon me by Sister Moira. What was that? Well, she prayed with me in a bathhouse when I was feeling lost. Well, if it mattered to you, is that all you're writing? For now, I think. I will probably go a little longer as I find my footing. Fair enough. Catherine would fill a whole page, that much I can tell you. A full page for each day? Yes, sometimes more. You don't have to do it that way, of course, but you were asking about what her writing was like. No, that's very helpful. Well now, I have work to do still. You can do as you please. I think I might walk around and check in on some of the others. Maybe I can fill up pages hearing what others are accomplishing. Not a bad idea. I stood up to leave. Before I could step away, however, Eustace gripped me by the shoulders. She looked into my eyes with a gaze even more serious than the one she used in the garden. I need you to promise me something, Hedwig. Yes? Never go wandering around back there on your own. The library? Can you do that for me? Heck. Into the bookshelves. Not without me. I don't understand. She squeezed my shoulders even tighter. You can borrow anything you want from the library, of course, but I can't have you going back there without my assistance. Or better yet, just ask me to get what you need for you. My organization system is precarious. Does that make sense? Not really. Some books here are very, very important and very, very valuable. I'm sworn to protect them, and my organization system is, well, precarious. As you have seen. It'd be a weight off my mind if I didn't have to worry about anyone else rummaging around back there. Of course. I shan't touch anything. Thank you. Okay, you know what? I feel like when Eustace brought up the thing about money, and coupled with the fact that she doesn't want to let Hedwig go in on her own to the back of the bookshelves. Oh goodness. Okay, but it just feels like perhaps Eustace has been bought out by someone, is housing some illegal documents in there or something else, and perhaps the thing with Adela might be related to that. There is also Catherine and Margaret's thing they were talking about in episode 1, the first part, and everything just seems suspicious. Everyone seems very suspicious. And when we're talking about the horrifying incident with the apparition, I don't know who it could be. Is it real? It had to be, right? Was Hedwig just imagining everything? But there was no goat, there was no blood. Maybe everything really is not there. Maybe Hedwig has been possessed or something like that. I would hate it if everyone in the church was somehow murdered by Hedwig in her sleep or something like that. Sorry, but my mind is really just jumping all over the place, and honestly, that scene was very scary. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It was really, really terrifying, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!